Welcome, everybody. This is the first podcast for Addicts In Recovery.
Or AIR.
Or AIR. AIR. That's a good one. And we are starting this podcast for a variety of reasons. I think my name's Zach, and this is Mike, and we're going to have Mike first start off telling us kind of like why are we doing this?
So, good question. I've, going through a 30-day treatment and, 90 days of IOP, one of my therapists he really had a strong emphasis on service and, saying that if you stick your feet in the water and keep them wet with giving back, and I really struggled trying to figure out, like, what do I do? Do I go help out at a food kitchen? Do I go go down to the homeless shelter? There's just a lot of things that cross my mind, but I think the one thing it struck a chord with me that I felt like I wanted to talk about it. If one person can benefit off this, we've done our job. That's how I feel. So I felt like a service-oriented position, trying to go that route with recovery would be a good thing. So that's why I decided to do this, and thank you for letting me rope you into this too.
I'm excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So, all right. So kind of the agenda that we have for this podcast is we're going to get into we're going to do a little rundown of who we are, and we're going to go over what is addiction, kind of who is an addict, and kind of how somebody can kind of fall into addiction, things like that.
Well, that was weird. The air just turned off.
The air just turned off.
So right now we're actually in my kitchen, in my house. We decided to come out here because it was a little felt roomier.
Yep.
But on the line of addiction as well, we to kind of not call out people, but to recognize it, to make it so it's more of a known thing. I know that that's something I've struggled with. I know my family struggled with it. There's a lot of enabling and deceiving and lying and a lot of stuff that kind of gets circulated into that. And, to kind of figure out who is an addict, I think that's a good thing we can chat about today.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it though. Let's talk about each other. Let's give a rundown. Zach, who are you?
All right. So I'm an addict, obviously. Then I grew up always kind of this awkward person. The only time that I wasn't a very awkward person is when I was using or drinking, and so that became very prevalent in my life. Very prevalent in my life. And it was
how old?
So I initially started using early teens, probably 10 or 11 maybe.
Okay.
And then my entire life I'd been abusing things. So right from the get-go, I remember I was a chunkier kid because I would eat everything in my path. Mm-hmm. And I would always binge watch cartoons. I could repeat probably every episode of SpongeBob, almost verbatim, and it's been 20 years. And so I've always had addictive tendencies, and it wasn't really that big of. I guess it wasn't really that big of a surprise when I went into treatment and they said you're a drug addict.
Right.
I already knew that. I was well aware of that. I was saying that when I was 14.
Right.
But it basically, it just spiraled from if it was food or if it was drugs or if it was whatever it may be, it just led me down to just this self-destruction. It's really what it was.
Yeah.
And finally, I can't say that at that point in time, when it came down to where I had to go to treatment, I can't say that I wanted to. I don't know if anybody wants to.
No, I think it's kind of
especially the taboo. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that.
I really want to go.
Man, I would just love to go to rehab. Amy Winehouse makes it sound so great. She, anyway. So, man, I went from there, and then I got into recovery, and it was I had never found, I guess, a peace of mind, or I guess a happiness that I had without drugs, until I got into recovery. And so that's why I just kept going. I just kept going. And it's been
Like during your process though, I mean, like maybe at least this is how I felt. Like felt like there was no way out. Like you were done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny. I have this really bad Christmas story. For some reason, like terrible things happen to me either around holidays or when it involves Disneyland. I don't know why. I'm serious. I don't know why. So when I was 18, I was like 17. I was like head over heels for this girl and whatnot, and she totally broke my heart, and she broke up with me anyway. It was like a week before Christmas, and we were spending Christmas in Disney World.
Oh boy.
And it was it was a nightmare. I can't believe my parents still talk to me after that. And then it happened again, or I didn't get my heart broken, but then we planned on going to Disneyland, and right before we go to Disneyland, like all hell breaks loose. But before we get back from Disneyland, and I get back from like strangling Mickey Mouse, and I ended up laying in this room, and I remember looking up at the ceiling fan, and I just remember like contemplating every way possible that I could hang myself from the ceiling fan.
Really?
I knew that my body weight was not going to be held up by like 2 screws in a sheetrock. So I had this kind of MacGyver setup going on where I was going to run a rope from the sliding door that was 4 feet away from it and then up to help support it. Because that's where my mind went. I mean, I literally had nothing else to do, and for some reason, it wasn't. I don't even know why this never even crossed my mind that there was a different way to live. It's
like a whole nother direction.
Yeah, exactly. And even if somebody had said that at that point in time, I'd have been like, "Yo, okay, fuck you."
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I know. Be like, what do you know?
You don't know me. Yeah.
But like that's a really good like point though, because I like so for example, I had an aunt growing up that was like a complete like meth, cocaine, like daily, binge drink every day. And it scared me growing up, a lot of like the heavier stuff, like to kind of avoid, like not do those things. Like I won't, that's like a line, like I won't cross that. But it was weird to kind of like watch myself kind of like find the area that was like, oh, that is okay.
Yeah.
Like this is, it's legal in the United States to drink, but the way I was doing it wasn't legal. But
the way I was doing it wasn't legal.
Definitely wasn't. But
it's a great cop out though.
Yeah,
it's legal.
Yeah, it's legal.
I mean, everybody's doing it.
Nobody judges you when you walk out of a 7-Eleven with like 2 30 packs. Like, oh, he's probably going to a party.
At 12:30 in the afternoon,
right? On a Tuesday. But I don't know. Like I just for the heavier stuff like that. Like I just remember just kind of always having that like limit or that barrier, like not to cross it, and I never did. But I don't know. I just don't know how I like got myself to that position. Like it's really a hard thing since I've been sober for 9 months of kind of like putting the puzzle back together. Like how did I get to there?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. When I man, I still remember the day. Hell, I remember where I was at when I the thought of getting into harder drugs, because I was smoking pot at a really young age. I mean, I got a DUI at 16.
Okay.
Like I was going, and it wasn't a DUI from alcohol either. I mean, it was a DUI from just about everything but alcohol. But I remember sitting in my friend's house, and I remember telling myself, I'll smoke pot. I'll drink. I might even, take a painkiller, here or there, but I'm never going to do meth. I'm never going to do cocaine, and I'm never going to do heroin. And the reason why I said that, and I think actually it was a fairly honest statement, is because I would like it too much.
Yeah, that's a real,
And it wasn't, what's funny is people always talk about, they talk about like meth Meth is such a dark word. Meth.
Right. It's like teeth falling out.
Exactly.
Like just like this zombie apocalyptic like.
And yeah, exactly. But then when you think of, when people talk about, like, say, ecstasy, for instance, ecstasy is much more, I mean, people talk about how they feel ecstasy, right? Ecstasy is much more of a happier, what they talk about. It's a social drug or whatever. Right. But they won't do meth, right? Like, ecstasy and meth are ridiculously similar. I mean, they're almost the same thing. And that was actually what led me down to using meth is one day I had somebody, or I was at my house or whatever, and somebody had it. And I thought, man, I told myself, I'm not going to do this. And then I looked back and I thought, well, I've been to, 100 raves, right? So I've taken ecstasy before. Well, I mean, it's similar to meth, right? Might as well just take it.
But don't you think, like, when you start to get that involved in it, like, I felt like, at least for me, I would catch myself doing things with, like, no reasoning behind it. It was like, I would just catch myself, like, at the liquor store.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't need to do this today. And also I'm like already 6 beers deep.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of that first, so the first justification that I had, like, as far as, let's just say meth goes, I mean, I've done every drug or gamut, but, when that first decision, or the first opportunity to take it, there's a thought that goes through the head of, maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't do this. And normal people, I guess normies, like ones that I use, finger quotations for that. They'll actually weigh out, like, consequences, and they'll actually weigh out, and I can't even say I did that. The one decision or the one thought that came through my head is, are you really going to do this? Are you really going to smoke this right now? And I did. And then from then on, it was once I hit that, it was habitual. Part of it. Yeah. I would end up with a pipe in my hand, or I'd end up with a rig in my hand, or I'd end up with a drink in my hand, or I'd end up with whatever. And that was just part of, exactly. It's just part of how it went. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. I know that, so I have a question for you. Like, when did you feel like you were kind of at the low? Like, everyone talks about, like a rock bottom experience, or, like, something that was really kind of a devastating thing. Sometimes it's people getting a DUI, or, like, losing their job or their family or whatever. But, like, what was it with you?
That's a really good question. I call it my first notable God shot. And I use the God term very loosely. Very loosely. I was working, and I was living out of a hotel room, and in Phoenix. And somebody from Utah, like, when you go, I mean, you think you know drugs. I mean, I grew up, like, around drugs, and if I wasn't around drugs, I was finding them. Like, I was trying to get to them. And you move to Phoenix, and it's like, I mean, when you can throw a rock and be over the border of Mexico,
right? It's
dude,
like all
I mean, it makes Utah look like a wasteland. And so I just tanked, man. I went down hard too. I remember initially going there, the plan was to get off, like to clean up, and I got down there and I found out, I mean, just the quantity of it and how everyone has it and just all this other nonsense. And I basically went from, cloud 9 for the first probably week to, I mean, basically 6 feet under. I was very close to being dead. And I can't say that there was actually like a low. What I can say is my hotel room, when I was on my way to this Disneyland trip, my hotel room was raided by the fire department. I've not really raided, but somebody burned something and set the fire alarm off.
Okay.
And fire protocol is you have to go through every room in the building. And even
you're like,
my cute
I'm
little
so screwed.
yeah, well, my cute little do not disturb sign, because I was out of town.
Oh, okay.
And so my cute little do not disturb sign didn't stop the cops from going in, or the fire department from going in. And they went in, and dude, it was so bad. My room was the lady that cleans the hotels, and I think she was talking a big game. I don't know. She said it was one of the worst rooms she'd ever seen. I don't think so. What I can say though is, yeah, I didn't think it was that bad. But what I can say is it hit me into the person that was paying for that hotel room was my dad, because I was working for my dad. Mm-hmm. And so immediately after it was raided or whatever, it was searched or however, immediately after I got busted, I guess, they called the cops, and the cops, or not the cops, sorry, they called my dad's partner. My dad's partner then called him. And then it was like basically all downhill from there. Mm-hmm. I lost my job. My family said I couldn't stay with them anymore, and they said the only way that you can.
How old were you at this time?
22.
Okay.
22. And I basically they kind of just dropped an ultimatum. They said either you're on the streets or you're going to rehab. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go to rehab. I didn't want to get sober.
Yeah, you're like, I'm having a great time.
Yeah, exactly.
But not really.
No, I was miserable.
Yeah.
I was so miserable, and I didn't know that I was miserable.
Right.
That was the thing. I always just thought that the world was rough, and I had it rough, and la 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 la. But in reality, it was I was very miserable.
Well, the weird thing about like when you're in that misery, what the feeling that came to me all the time was like almost claustrophobic, you know, mm-hmm. like, or just like like I feel like I lost my freedom.
Yeah.
You know, where you're like, I can do whatever I want to do. Mm-hmm. And then you end up choosing that path, and like you're revolving around like the drug.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like, my days gotta float around that. Yeah. And that feeling was, you know, 'cause I grew up very claustrophobic and mm-hmm. just like hated elevators, hated tight spaces, and like feeling that pressure that like I had to have alcohol wherever I went was terrifying.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You know, so it is like it's you know, you're thinking you're having a great time, but it's total hell. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then you think that you have like, I mean, when I turned 18, and I was an adult, you know.
Right.
I was out of the house, and the first place I went to was a place that I knew I could get away with partying, because I knew that was what I wanted to do. Yeah. Is I wanted to party, and that's exactly. I mean, my first decision was, I am moving to where I can party, and then from there I would rotate my life around whoever had what or wherever it was.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, that was the bottom. The bottom for me really wasn't. It wasn't as much of a bottom as I necessarily could create myself, mm-hmm. as much as, I don't know, you know, say the universe or God or whatever. I mean, to me, it's all the same thing. Something extenuating, something outside of me caused this set of events to happen, mm-hmm. and that is what pushed me to actually like
dive into it.
Yeah, stop getting high.
So like, let's talk about that then for a second. And so before we switch gears, so you go into rehab then, and like, what's your like total attitude at the beginning?
Fuck you. Fuck you. Dude, I went into rehab, and I work in a rehab,
yeah.
And let me tell you, I would have beat my own ass, mm-hmm. Because I went in there and immediately thought, these people are just in it for their money.
Yeah.
They just want my money, and that's all they want. And
it's because like, not to cut you off, but like like you hear of it, and it's kind of a novelty. You know, you're like, okay, Betty Ford, and they're like, people are paying $100,000 a month just to go to like a place, and it's like, is this like a country club? You know, or like what? How bad are these people really? Like, what type of like? I want to know their habits before, you know. I want to know the story behind it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's kind of like I don't know, like a novelty, but then at the same time, it's kind of like a down looked on thing too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? You went to rehab, Zach?
Yeah.
Zach?
I remember jamming.
You know,
I remember
like
jamming
your
Amy
friends,
Winehouse in rehab. Yeah.
I'm sure your friends' parents are like, oh, did you? You
know,
have you heard from Zach lately?
No kidding. Oh yeah, the ward asks all sorts of questions.
Well, you got to tell people what a ward is, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. The church members that live in my area, ask all sorts of questions.
So clearly, Zach and I grew up in a very LDS, which is Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, or Mormons.
Yeah.
We both kind of grew up with that in our past.
Oh yeah.
We'll chat about religion another time. That will take a long time. Okay, so let's jump back in. So you go to rehab.
Yeah, so I go to rehab and I'm pissed. I'm so mad. I'm mad at life. I'm mad at the world. I'm mad at my parents. I'm mad at, I don't know. If somebody looked at me, I'd be mad at them. Just because I was just genuinely angry. I had been so beaten down that I couldn't see past anything but doom and gloom, and I'm gonna die, or what's the point? I'm gonna move, or I'm gonna leave here and I'm gonna get high again. Stupid, shit like that. And so
Did you ever have like the mindset like, when I leave, this is what I'm gonna go do it again?
Like I'm
like
gonna go
that
get high
attitude.
again?
Yeah, or just kind of like, you know what, I can do what I want.
Several times. So when I first went into rehab, I thought drinking was sober.
Okay.
I'm not even kidding, because I was like a heavy, hardcore drug addict, and so I would use, any time that I would come down off of anything, so say, I was on a 2-week meth binge or whatever, I would use alcohol as a way to come off of that.
Okay.
So I would take, 3 or 4 days of like a week-long sabbatical after, and the only reason I would do that is because my family would find out, or somebody would find out, and then it'd be a big explosion.
Right.
So I'd be like, all right, I'm going to get drunk for a week.
Right.
And I considered that to be sober. And so when I went into rehab, I immediately thought, okay, I'm going in, and the only reason I'm going in is so that I can just drink.
Right.
And I
be like normal.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna, like the big book would say, drink like a gentleman.
Sure.
And so I went through, and I'm not even kidding you. I was so miserable that there was a guy that came in like 2 weeks after me, and I convinced him to leave. I couldn't leave, but he could.
Yeah.
And so
you don't need this.
You don't need this. And then of course he went back out and started drinking again.
Yeah.
Thank God he's alive.
Yeah.
I probably feel pretty terrible. But that's just where I was at, man. I didn't ever see myself working with people in recovery. I didn't even see myself staying in recovery to begin with. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I wanted when I initially got in there was just to, for one, basically get the world off my back.
Right.
And I needed to keep my job, and I needed to have a place to live. And
so a lot of people talk about like kind of the reasonings why they do what they do, in addiction, like having kind of that addictive personality. And like, was there something that was underlining with you that was like, I just am not like happy, or like I'm not, like, things in my life aren't what I want it to be? Like, am I not good enough to my parents, or like, am I struggling in school? Do you know? Yeah. Because you started at such a young age. I mean,
started at a really young age.
Do you remember any of that? Like,
oh yeah, a lot of it had to do, and I'm gonna put a disclaimer on here that, man, I love my parents,
mm-hmm.
And my dad is a really good man, but his level of effective communication is zero.
Okay,
it's pretty bad, but everything else about him, he's great.
Well, but to kind of give it back, because we've talked about this in the past. My dad's very similar. My dad, I'm in a construction family, and mm-hmm. we're in a drilling family.
Yeah, construction.
Right?
Same,
so so kind of a hard blue collar father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And he was one of those, no emotion, no sympathy, no anything like that. I mean, anytime that I would do something, so he would say, hey, go mow the lawn, and I would go mow the lawn, and he would say, you mowed the lawn, but you missed this spot, and you missed this spot, and you can do better, and you can do better. And it was never a thank you, or you did a great job,
this looks great.
Yeah, or this looks great. No, it was, you missed a spot, and you can do better, and you can do better. And that really ate at me for a really long time as a kid, because I could never meet up to daddy's expectations.
Right. So where did you fall in your family?
What do you mean, like
siblings?
Siblings?
Sorry,
oh no, you're fine. I'm the middle child.
Okay, so I'm the same way. Like I'll give you a little rundown on me. So when my mom and dad always kind of joked when I was born that I was like didn't cry. I came out of the womb like smiling. And I've always been kind of a genuine inherently happy person, you know, smiling a lot, laughing a lot, never taking life too seriously. But I think my parents kind of overlooked that, you know, like he's okay. He seemed like he's laughing, he's having a good time, he's excelling at the sports that he's doing or whatever. And I think not that my parents did anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It was just how I was. It was like, okay, I'm content. I don't need help, you know? And Absolutely. I think like in my later years, starting to notice more times that I wish that seeing some of my parents, you know, or my friends' parents do things with them and like going on trips or like going skiing together or doing stuff. Like I got really kind of jealous and like kind of like pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Like what was wrong with me? Why didn't I get that attention? You know?
Yeah.
And not that was like the reasoning, like, well, I'm not going to be rebellious now. And, you know, but it definitely, you know, middle child, it has its little twirls in there.
It does. You know? It does. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it was basically a lot of it had to do with just parent issues.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of parent issues, and then by the time I was in grade school, I mean, I was idolizing these, you know, dead rock stars, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, you know, Jim Morrison, exactly. I had this kick. I think I was probably in like maybe 6th grade, and I had this kick about Jim Morrison and how he wasn't really dead.
Right.
You know, some conspiracy, man.
He just left to Europe.
Yeah, he just left to Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and so really it came down the way that it initially started. I mean, I couldn't honestly tell you what day I decided I was just gonna be an addict.
Right,
yeah, right. But what I can say is it started really young.
Okay,
that's for sure. So. Anyway, we've already spent a half hour on me. It's about time to turn these tables on you.
No, I like to ask you the questions. I think it's fun to listen to people.
All right, man.
What do you want to know?
Start off, man. What do you got?
Well, let's see. Like I kind of touched bases a little bit, kind of my middle child stuff, but you know, I had a great childhood. I really did. Parents are great. Family was great. We were pretty close, all of us. My older brother, he actually kind of stepped in quite a bit of being kind of a dad figure at times, you know, needing someone to blame, rock climbing or another ski partner, you know, or camping buddy, because he didn't want to be lost by himself. He needed, you know. So I used to kind of tag along with him. He's quite a bit older than me, so it was kind of fun to grow up that way. But, you know, I always had this, like, I went to the high school I went to is extremely, like, an active, you know, Mormon high school, and I really cared a lot for some reason of what other people thought of me. For some reason I always had like this value of what people thought, and I wasn't living up to that. You know, like if my friends were like, oh, I'm taking this AP whatever class, like I would like weasel myself into the counselor and be like, you know, I can probably handle this AP class, and they're like, you sure? It might be kind of hard on you, you know, like not that I was a terrible student, like I got good grades, but it was just like it was like I was just doing it for kind of the wrong reason, you know? Mm-hmm. So I cared a lot about that. So in high school, I just like avoided drugs, alcohol, all of it. Just never, you know, I saw it definitely at parties and whatever. And I just was like, I'm never want to do that. And then once I graduated, it was like, here we go. You know, like I went on a senior trip to Cancun. We lied to our parents, all of us, and we just were like, yeah, we have a chaperone that's going to come to Cancun with us. And we just got on an airplane and just flew to Cancun, you know. And that was like pretty wild. I mean, like you're going to Senior Frogs and like, you know, you're 18 years old and you're like, okay, here we go, clubbing all night. You know, you're just drinking, you know, they just give you so much alcohol down there. It's just like they walk around with like spray bottles, you know, and like pump keg thingies and just like squirt tequila in people's mouths. And I just remember I had a really big fear when I was down there because like I was watching my friends drink as much as I was, and then they would just like be obliterated where they would just pass out. And that would never happen to me. Like I was watching them, I was like, I just equally drink as much as him, but why am I not feeling or looking like I should be like him? I should be like on the bed asleep. And I'm just like, I want more.
Yeah.
You know?
Wasn't that like a very proud moment where you're like, I just outdrank that
Yeah,
guy.
I can outdrink you.
Yeah.
Like, it's like this like pride thing. It's like the dumbest pride. Like, let's see who can kill our bodies first.
Exactly.
Ready, set, go.
Who
But
can
like,
handle the most poison?
but I just remember, being down there and just kind of noticing that. And when I got home, I would notice my friends like at random parties just like having a couple of beers, and like I would be already like 6 beers ahead, like mentally of them. They're like, I would sneak into the fridge or go and grab a bottle and just kind of like start to kind of pound it down, and thinking that was normal. And at that point, like I should have known that behavior is not normal.
Yeah, but who's there to tell you?
Nobody.
You're telling you were gonna tell anybody
I
when
know.
they're sneaking drinks.
Right. So like I just became like really good at like that pathway of like I could deceive. Like I literally could pass a field sobriety test just completely wasted, and I did. I mean, I got pulled over going 160 miles an hour on a 50-mile-per-hour road in my car, and I had 8 or 9 empty cans behind my seat. And I had a jug of Fireball on my lap, and the cop was shining his flashlight at my lap. He was like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, it's just a gift. It's not opened." And I just like put it on my seat. But like my attitude like would change when I get drunk, because like I turn like really like professional and like really like turn it back to him. Like, so why did you pull me over, officer?
Oh yeah.
And just so I don't know. It's a really messed up way, because like I got away with it for so long.
How did it feel? So when you went to Cancun, was that like the first time that you really got?
Yeah, I
wasted?
mean, it was like daily drinking. Like we'd have mimosas in the morning and Bloody Marys, and then like it eventually turned to drinks during the afternoon, and then we'd be at the beach and hanging out surfing and just getting drunk for 10 days. And
how did it feel to get out of society and to go do?
It felt like liberating, because like I was always the type, like I just loved outdoorsy stuff and like travel. Like I always had that like as a high value. Like I want to do this. Like I want to backpack Europe. I want to, because I was always active, with kayaking or racing, skiing or mountain biking or whatever, anything outside. But that just like felt liberating. Like I'm an adult, I can do this. And like the weird thing was I never really had any hangovers. It was like I could just keep going, and it was scary, but I didn't see how scary that was. It was just like, oh, I'm lucky. I was like treating it like I was lucky, watching my friends like throwing up that night. Like, and we almost got arrested down there. My friend, we got so drunk at a bar that we got into a taxi cab. My friend puked all over the taxi car, and there was a police officer behind the taxi driver, and they were talking with each other like, what should we do? Should we, the police officer like, do you want me to take him to jail? And I just like ran into the hotel room and like ripped off a 5-gallon jug of water that was like, the water dispenser.
Oh yeah.
I ripped it off and I ran out there and just like started dumping it all over the car. I'm like, my friend like wipe off with his shirt all over the, it was stupid. And then the taxi guy let us go, and he's like, "Oh, move on, don't do that again." But it was just dumb.
No bueno.
Yeah, no bueno. Los cientos. But it was but when I got home from that, like it was just kind of randomly drinking here and there, and then there was a gap of like probably 5 years, 3 or 4 or 5 years where I didn't drink at all, and then it just.
What do you think happened there? Why do you think? I mean, do you think like your like addiction went into remission, or I mean, how do you think? Because there's a lot of people. I mean, in this specifically in the facility I'm working in, there was somebody who would come up to me and say, I don't know why I'm here. I don't have a problem. I quit for 10 years.
Right.
And
well, I think you kind of like turn it, because like my intention for a long time was I was competitively mountain bike racing, like long endurance races, and not just racing to race to have a fun on a weekend. I mean, it was, I'm not trying to like boost myself, but I was really competing, at a, really high level. And I was riding my bike, ridiculous goals. I had to climb 20,000 feet a week on my mountain bike. That was average. And I was, caking about 5,000 miles a year on my mountain bike alone, another probably 3,000 on my road bike. So it was like almost 10-ish thousand miles a year. And that was like that for a while. that my wife and I, we got pregnant, not me, she, on our first, and it's not like things changed, but like the dynamics at the home were very different. Cause like when you're barely, married, you have like a relationship with each other, and you are busy, like you're at school or you're at work, and you get home at night, and then like you just kind of hang out and whatever. But when you add a child into the factor, it definitely slowed things down for me. And at that point I was like social drinking, having a beer on Fridays at lunch with a couple of buddies, to weekend stuff. And it started turning when I like started having it so accessible, and like just noticing, like I go to the liquor store, and then like I start getting, and then people start recognizing me at the liquor store, and then I'm like, is this a problem? What am I doing? And that pattern went so fast. I'm shocked at how quickly like it went from being okay, like as a social drinker, but always in the mindset, the reason why I was doing it wasn't ever to like pair a glass of wine with like some salmon. It was like, let's drink the whole bottle. It was never the intention of the drink was never to like pair it or like enjoy it with like the taste of the flavor. I wanted the effect of it for sure.
Absolutely.
So kind of like long story short, so that turned into about a 5-year, binge, about 5 year solid binge of daily drinking and nobody noticing it. Like I work in a family business with like my older brother who was pretty aware of stuff, but my dad for sure just like in denial of like, no, he's not, that's not, when I actually told him, because I'll talk more about this later, but when I actually told him, I was like, Dad, I need some help. He's like, hey, Michael, let's just go get in the car. I'll take you to an AA meeting right now. I'm like, nah. I heard that helps. And I'm like looking at my dad, like across the way, like, pretty much crying in my living room. I'm just like, Dad, like, I need help. Like, I need help. And that was hard. That was really hard because like he is my boss too, so it's like dad and boss,
I hear you.
Like why the fuck have you guys not seen any of these signs in the past? Like why has nobody said anything to me? Like clearly people have like told me after, like, yeah, I did notice like you did smell like alcohol quite a bit. And it's like, why didn't you say something to me? Like it wasn't in a setting of like we're at dinner or something. It was like at my son's soccer game. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I noticed you smell like alcohol at your son's soccer game. What's going on? Is everything okay? But people have like that. I don't know.
I think a lot of it comes with the culture too. So, a lot of people, especially in the Mormon culture, they have they would rather sit back and judge than they would address.
Sure. Well, it's easier.
It is, absolutely. Or to even be in denial. My mom, like, bless her heart, she lived in denial. Yeah, man, we can hear the jets. She lived in denial. I mean, just total. I remember having like people would call my mom and say, hey, your son's on drugs. Mm. I mean, they could probably have handed her drugs, and said, hey, we got these out of your son's bag. And my mom would immediately, no, he's just having a hard time. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's just a kid, whatever it may be.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of amazing, but it's also people who haven't been there before.
Right.
Don't necessarily know what to
like
look
what
for.
to do. Yeah. Or like what's okay and what's not okay.
And so, yeah, exactly. And I found it really fascinating that that you switched gears. So like you were drinking for a while, you were partying, and then you switched to a new almost obsession, which was competing, biking. I mean, constantly moving, working, and then it switched back again. So right. So like this guy that I was talking to that said, I quit for 10 years or whatever. I quit cold turkey. I never went to an AA meeting. I never got into recovery or any of that stuff. I just quit. 9 out of 10 times, that's what happens is the addiction doesn't necessarily go away. It just changes faces.
Sure. But there's different, like, on kind of speaking of faces, there's different faces of it too. Like there could be the binge drinker that's every single day, or the morning drinker, or like a weekend, whatever, or every other week, or the addict that's that way too. You know, that's not like has to do this every single day and can't function without it right the second. I mean, there's different levels of it.
Yeah.
You know, like I've seen it with some of people that I know that it's like, I can't believe that you daily drink. And I'm like, okay, well, then you're almost like comparing. You're like, well, I can't believe you drank all that tonight, you know, at a party. That was a lot to handle, you know? So everyone's a little bit different too, I guess, in their own ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I find it, and you're right, the different faces of it, because there are so many. I mean, as far as addiction goes, I like to use addiction just because the definition of alcoholism is being addicted to alcohol.
Right.
So like it's flat definition. So I just use addiction because it's more versatile. But alcoholism is literally the same thing, just in a different face. And to see, like, say for instance, Mormon suburbia is antidepressants, like Valium and Xanax and or painkillers. I don't know how many people I know that were hyper religious at one point, and then they injured themselves, and then they ended up as heroin addicts because they got hooked on their pills that their doctor gave them, and they thought, oh well, the doctor gave me this, so this is safe.
Well, there's a lot of pressure when you live in a community like that where it's like perfectionism, like be perfect.
It is perfect, too.
Like, you got to do this, and I think for a lot of people they kind of get stuck in that trap, you know, where they're like, I can't, like and here's one thing I wanted to chat about, because it's more of like one thing that's really helped me out, and it's kind of more of that mindful approach of it, of slowing down, and if you're trying to be like that quest of perfection and you're not fitting in, it's okay to stop, you know, and freeze, and really like listen to yourself. And I feel like people just struggle with that. Like, I know that I struggle with that so much, of just being aware of my need. And going into rehab was like the first time that I was able to like look at myself in the mirror and say like, okay, slow it down. Don't worry about everything right now. Like, let's just focus on you, you know? And that's hard. You know, that's really hard for people to do that. It was extremely hard for me. And I know that, you know, but I'm happy that I did that. It really like, okay, I don't have to, you know, I can wake up in the morning and it's okay to feel like shit. It's what I do with that is what's the important part of it, you know?
Right.
Like, you could wake up groggy or happy or sad or whatever. Like, I wish people were more like honest about that when they wake up. Yeah. And like openly about it, just like coming up to their like a friend or their spouse or their children or anybody and just being like, you know what? I feel like shit right now. You know, and just being okay with that, not hiding it. Yeah. Not hiding and tiptoeing around, you know, feeling like that. So it's definitely a huge thing that helped me out.
That's cool. Okay, so we started veering course a little bit. What happened? I know. We do that. What happened to? I did the same thing. So, so you binged for like 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And what was your bottom? What happened?
So, with me, like I started noticing like I started getting hangovers, and that was like, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, because I could still drink a whole bunch of alcohol and still compete mountain biking. Like it would just wear off, you know, just like burn off, and I was like, okay, I feel good. But I started getting a little bit older, and I started noticing just the slow recovery of it. Just like I can't, you know, it's like a half a day turned into a day, and then a day turned into 2 days of feeling like shit, you know? And I started noticing my amounts going up higher. You know, I started drinking like just like a 6-pack a day, and then it started turning into like a 12-pack, and then the 12-pack turned into like a 30-pack, you know? And that was a daily thing for a long time. And my rock bottom was I knew that I needed help, and like, but it made me feel, and I would justify it by like watching, this sounds so goofy, but like, you know, the show Intervention.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I used to watch Intervention, and like these, and I just watched these like people, and it would make me feel happy. I was like, man, like I'm not that bad, you know, like and like this total denial of like, you know, you'll do okay. You know, you'll be better tomorrow. And then I would do like the dumbest things too, like where I would reward myself. Like my longest amount of sobriety in 5 years was probably maybe a day or two. And I made it past like those 2 days, and I would like lie to myself, be like, hey, Michael, you got this. Like, you should go reward yourself, man. Like, you earn yourself
You
a
made
12
it
pack.
2
You
days,
went 2
man.
days.
48
Yeah.
hours. That's like a lifetime.
Right. You earned it. You earned it. This one's on you. You know, so so I had to like run to the liquor store and grab more. But I started like I'm getting sidetracked, but I started noticing like the recovery out of that was just terrible. I felt like crap, and like I noticed that my relationship with my spouse, this is kind of the more important one that I was not aware of, and I don't think a lot of people are, when they are struggling with that type of addiction, how much pull it has on a relationship. But there's so much blame around so many other parts of that. It's not like alcohol. Like alcohol was never the problem. It was like, we just don't get along, you know, or we just argue about something stupid. And I was like, this isn't clicking. And it turned into all these other facades. And deep down inside, once I actually kind of peeled back all the layers of it, I realized it was the alcohol really was the root of the problem. You know, like the trust and the denial and the hiding and the deceiving of alcohol all over my house. And my wife would find it, and I'd come up with some stupid excuse, like, oh, I don't know, that was there for like a year ago. And it's like, well, we've only been living in this house for 6 months, so that's not even possible. You know.
It's basically a year.
Yeah, right. But you just come up with like the most horrendous stories behind it. And I finally, my wife and I, she found some more like bottles of wine somewhere, and she left the house, and she was all pissed at me, and I just like broke down by myself in my house alone. I just thought, okay, I have a home, I have a job, I have a wife, I have kids. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I just ruining this? And all of these memories I'm thinking of like Christmas, drunk, New Year's, completely drunk, Thanksgiving, drunk, kids' birthday parties, drunk, and like starting filling these memories with that type of behavior really was really depressing. You know, like my family's better off without me. It's more of those thought process that starts to kind of click and thinking like, who cares what happens to me? You know, I'm not coming out of this. I feel like shit all day long, every day, and it's a horrible feeling. So what happened to me was like I told my wife, I told her to come back home. I was like, don't leave the house. Like, I don't want to. We're not doing this. Like, we're not that couple. I want to talk with you. So she came back to the house, and I was just having a conversation. I was just like, I need help, you know, and I don't know what that is. And I'm always been kind of an anxious person, and I had all these like, you hear the horror stories of like people withdrawing off of alcohol, and they're like, okay, you can die from that. And just thinking of like that alone, I was like, okay, like I would be like closing my eyes at night and be like, well, this might be it. Like, good night, world, you know. And it was a real feeling like that. And then I told my wife, I was like, I need some help. So I did the right thing, and I went to a doctor. And I went to the doctor, and I started telling him about like my history and like what I've been doing. And he was, you know, non-biased, great doctor in a way. I should throw him under the bus for this one, but it's my own fault. But he gave me Librium and Lexapro, and I started taking that, and it turned me into a whirlspin of the concoction of Librium, Lexapro, and a bunch of alcohol doesn't quite mix. So it's not the best thing, you know. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I just was abusing that. And I got pulled over, and I told the story earlier. I was going 160 miles an hour, and cops came over, pulled me over, whatever. So then I drove home. Luckily, I didn't go to jail that night, but I got back to my house, and I like kicked the door open. I was like yelling, like not at my wife, but like just really mad, like, I can't believe I got pulled over, and da 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 da, and just was off on some story. And then like she went to bed, and I just was like marching around the house, and like eventually I just like turned into this like outer body experience I've never felt before. Like I was just not there. I was like just a robot, and just cooped up on Lexapro and Librium and a bunch of alcohol. And my wife found me at like 2-3 in the morning with a gun to my head in my closet. And I had no idea how I even got there. Like, it was really shocking. It was loaded, ready to go. And she just like looked at me and she was just like, what are you doing? Like, screaming, you know? And then she obviously had a fear of her own life because she had no idea what I was doing.
Absolutely.
She says I was trying to talk back to her, and I was like not even speaking English. It was just like blurts. And so after that, I had she called the police, and there was not just one police officer that came. I mean, there was like 15 with the paramedics and fire truck, and they all came to the house. And fortunately, the chief of police captain, he talked me over the phone in like a really clear way, just like, hey, Mike, like, this isn't you, you know, like, just put the gun down, don't do anything stupid, like, don't come out the house like with the gun, like.
That escalated quickly,
so fast, right? and I just felt like finally I came to when I was in the ambulance, and I had to go to the hospital, and then like they took my blood sample, and my like blood alcohol level was like through the roof. They were like treating me like a science experiment. They're just like, should we give him some like IV? Like, you know, should we give him some fluids? He's not doing very well. But here was the thing that was like really like hard on me, was when I was actually laying in the hospital bed, and I would like ask a nurse, I was like, I'm thirsty, or I want a blanket, I'm cold. Dude, they treated me like fucking shit.
Really?
Yeah, dude, because like they thought that I was like suicide guy. You know, like, oh, he doesn't give a shit about his life. He doesn't, oh, no, now he wants a blanket. He's all cold. Oh, he's thirsty. A couple hours ago, he had a gun to his head, you know? And that was, like, really weird. They were just like, okay. And then after that, I had to go to a psych ward for, like, 2 days, you know, because I was, like, whatever they call it, 51-50 or 50-50 or 50, I don't know. There's some code, police code, I don't know. Where, like, you can't leave. But so long story short with that, like I did that for the weekend, and it was terrible. I hated it. Like, just being in like, you know, the lady from The Ring.
Yeah.
There was like a lady like that would pace up and down the hallways, and then they had to come in and check on you every 15 minutes, make sure you were breathing at night too. So like they come in and like shake your elbow. I was like, yeah, I'm still awake. You came in here 15 minutes ago. So I got out of that, but like, so what I'm trying to say is even that. Okay, so I had that experience, and like a lot of people would have like clued in and be like, hey, that's enough.
Yeah, that's
like,
pretty big low, man.
Let's just cut
very
it off.
Big low.
Let's just cut it off. But like literally within a few days of getting out of that, I was drinking again. Isn't that insane?
Because it's not the alcohol that was the problem,
right?
I'm sure it could have been like anything else. You know,
right.
I didn't have enough sleep that night.
Right,
maybe that's it.
And it was like 5 or 6 days of sobriety, and first time I drank again, it was like I went to bed that night, and I woke up and I didn't have a hangover. I was like, oh, I can do this. I can be an adult. I can be an adult drinker, But anyhow, it turned into kind of like a month and a half-ish of just whatever. And then eventually my wife and it was just like, it was present again. She was like, clearly you're drunk. And that's when I like threw the towel in and called my parents. I like had a self-intervention, you know, like with my parents. Wow. And kind of brought them here and just told them, I was like, I'm not okay. Like, I literally said to my mom, I was like, Mom, I am not okay. And she just looked at me and she's like, yeah, we're here. What do we need to do? And that's when I jumped in and decided to do a 30-day treatment, which was huge, you know, and definitely all these like weird things about it, like thinking like, oh great, now everyone's gonna know about it, everyone's gonna treat me like shit, you know, just all these weird things. But over time, like you kind of peel off all those layers and you start feeling me, like myself. I feel like the person who I feel like kind of God wanted me to be.
Yeah.
You know, like me, authentic self.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and that felt good to get that back again.
Yeah. Is that why you keep doing it? Is that why
Yeah, I think like, I mean, one thing I'm like really grateful for, I'm so happy that I have like a memory that I do. I just remember so much, and I have a sense of like smells too. Really weird. I like, my wife can't wear like perfume because it gives me headaches, but like different smells bring back different memories. And when I smell something, it's either associated with a positive or a negative. You know, like if I smell like a vodka, a certain type, you know, even I'm like, oh yeah, that was a fun time, or like, or a negative or terrible time. But all having that type of a mindset is nice now, because like I can stop myself before the problem occurs. You know, I can say, well, you don't want to do this because this is what it's done for you. And taking like that type of break power that I've learned has been huge and beneficial to me.
Yeah, kind of playing the tape through.
Right.
Right.
Long story short, sorry, that's a lot of like.
No, you're good.
Hopefully it made sense. Probably doesn't.
It does. I think it does. I don't know. I guess it really depends on whoever's listening to this right now.
Sorry, everybody. These two are so weird.
All right. So we have, we've kind of made it through the intros. We've only spent an hour on it. So
I think it's great.
yeah. So let's, you want to talk about some addiction stuff?
Sure.
Let's talk about it. What's your definition? What is your version of addiction? Like, what do you see it as?
I see it as, it's hard for me, but I feel like it's a personality thing. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like to each their own of something, but I feel like deep down inside, your personality of who you are has like a level of addiction of whatever that is. Mm-hmm. If that's you're having to go to McDonald's in the morning to get a Diet Coke sort of a thing, or overeating of like anything, or drinking, or obviously drugs, alcohol, spending, porn. I think there's so much stuff that is out there, but I feel like it's more of a personality thing to me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
What about you?
I think you're right. I think addicts get put into, I think the word addiction, it has a lot of taboo to it. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says that they're addicted, or they're an addict, immediately, and society has done this as well on media and things like that. You see an addict as this terrible, maybe homeless.
Right.
See them on the street, tattered
like
clothes,
begging for
change,
mm-hmm.
or they're criminals and they're in jail and they've got tats all over the place and they've got all these. There's this stigma to it, mm-hmm. and I think that's a really big misconception mm-hmm. as far as addiction goes. I mean, the definition for addiction, like the
like Webster.
DSM-5. Oh no, this is professional. By the way, neither of us are doctors, so
or are we?
Or are we? Addiction is defined as a maladaptive pattern of substance use leading to clinical significant impairment or distress. But substance use could also be substances, a thing, or an activity. So it could really be, anything that causes someone distress, and it doesn't even have to be like blatant distress. The neighborhood mom that drinks too much soda and is 300 pounds, you know. Obviously, there's a problem because they're constantly drinking sugar, but they're also constantly overweight, and that's causing their life distress. Same with, you could do the overspender, like what you said.
Right, like the person that's applying for more and more credit cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Like thousands of dollars in debt.
Exactly, and they can look really well off. I mean, that's a great wardrobe that you're wearing. However, you're, $60,000 in debt with your new car and whatever else, they buy. And that's also addiction.
But also with those other things, though, like there's like a level in society where like it's not okay, but like people not like getting away with it, but like it's not like it's obviously the guy that's homeless on the street is like very clear, like he has a problem,
Yeah.
Where I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like on these other levels of addictions, it's like, well, clearly he's overweight, but like there's kind of levels of, I feel like they're like ranked.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So say like for instance, a heroin addict is going to get a lot more crap for their addiction in comparison to a shopping addict.
Sure.
Right? And so on. And there are levels of, somebody who is severely obese that has a serious eating problem. A lot of people give slack to that. They're like,
absolutely.
they're like, well, they have an overactive thyroid or whatever. And honestly, I'm sure there are obese people that have an overactive thyroid or whatever.
Well, I'm sure there is, but
like,
there's
a lot of people just, I mean, they see it and they go, oh, well, that's just, this person. But in reality, that person is killing themselves just as quick as the heroin addict is killing themselves.
But I'm not judging this by any means. Like, don't think that I'm going off in the wrong way. But a lot of times, like when I do see like an obese person, you also see that in that family too. Oh. Like you see like younger children that are like clearly obese, and it's like, what's going on, And it's the same thing, like kind of like with the alcoholic too. It's like,
oh yeah,
dad's an alcoholic. Little kids learn kind of the ropes of that type of addictive personality, or the child that sees the mom at the store always buying a bunch of random shit that they don't need.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like becomes like their norm.
Yeah. And that's actually, I mean, that's really how a lot of addiction, or I guess just addictive habits and tendencies spread.
Start.
Is from parent to child to child to child.
Right.
One of the things, I mean, I've had years of therapy. And one of the things that I had a therapist tell me was the way that if no one addresses those behaviors, so if nobody addresses, say for instance, their shopping habit or I don't know, their dependency on whatever it may be, what happens is that because there's shame that's involved with it, right? Everybody who experiences some level of addiction, whatever it may be, always experiences kind of some level of shame. Like, so say I went and bought this new wardrobe, and I like focusing on stuff that's not as, I'm a heroin addict, and I
had to go down
stole
and get
my
my
mom's
fix.
purse. Yeah, I like focusing on things that are a little less dramatic because that happens. That's viewed more commonly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, say for instance, like the suburban housewife who has a Valium script, and she is constantly taking more than what she's recommended, or
justifying because her name's on the label.
Yeah, justifying because her name's on the label, or even say that she runs out and she takes her friends or something like that. There's this level of shame, whatever it may be, and in whatever regard, sticks with them, and then what happens is that shame gets passed down from her to their kids, and the kids actually take that shame, and then they get into those habits, the same habits that the parent is in with that shame, and then it just progressively spirals. And so there's a lot of people out there that are carrying like shameful habits that came from their grandparents,
right?
And it just progressively goes, and there's a way to actually, and by addressing it, you can actually stop that. But that's I mean, just from what I've seen by working in the treatment or in the recovery industry, because I worked with youth that were in state custody for a few years, and all of them, I mean, every one of them are products of their parents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so in the construction world, I actually did a project at it was a lockdown prison, like the worst of the worst go. Like there was death row inmates, like all of them in the whole state were there. And we were doing this remodel job at the prison, and I had to go. I was the project manager. I went out there and met with them, and all this dust was flying into the waiting room where like the parents come in and see their sons. And I was like, maybe we should blow off the smoke because it's like going all over the place. And the head warden looked at me and she was like, don't turn it off. Like, let it, we got to get this construction. We got to get this thing rolling. I want this project to finish. And she says, I don't really give a shit about those people. She's like, and this is terrible. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but she was just like, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, because then I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, look, and you're listening. And the mom is yelling at the son who's serving a life sentence, and she's like, you got hit? You go hit him back.
Yeah.
And she's screaming at her son, like, and I looked at the warden and I was just like, oh, it's true though. Like in some ways, I'm not saying all of it. I'm not going to be that guy, but
yeah, you've already just lost a listener.
I know.
Podcast one. Sorry, everybody.
Since there's nobody right now, I should just apologize to myself. That was like a weird long tangent around it, but basically what we were,
Yeah, what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as addiction goes, I mean, there's so many ways to look at addiction, and I personally hate I don't hate it. I mean, it's negative. I try to combat the whole negative stigma of it, but I also try and combat the whole stigma that addictions are different. So like the addiction or the difference between addiction and alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
You go to AA or NA or CA or FA or whatever it may be, and they're all created because these people can't agree on my addiction is different than yours.
Right.
How it's the same. Do you see a difference in it? Like,
Well, like for me, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like for me, like I walked into rehab and never doing like what I would consider a hardcore drug.
mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like you're already leveling yourself up when you walk into a facility. You're like, oh, I watched one guy walk down. And he was like, yeah, my DOC is math or whatever. And I was just like, oh, well, shit. I'm glad I didn't do that. Like so. I think no matter how whatever angle you take, people are still going to level up. On a level of like I'm not that or I'm not this or if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we compare ourselves to. I mean, we put ourselves just instinctually on a pedestal higher than somebody else to make ourselves feel better about where we're at. Yeah,
it's like I'm so happy I've never been an alcoholic, but man, I have $100,000 in credit card debt.
But I'm not drunk like that guy.
Or I lost my foot because I was a diabetic because I couldn't stop drinking Sprite.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I have a question for you though. So talking about addiction though, so how do you approach somebody with an addiction though?
Man, that's a really good question.
That's like I'm wondering because like you're like, oh, like you
really
probably
good
shouldn't
question.
spend money if you don't have the money, like on that level. But like, how does one do that though?
I think that it's like I mean I've seen so many ways that people approach it,
Mm-hmm.
and there are so many wrong ways to approach it. So I think I'll focus on that first. The first one is do not call them out. Like so if I had somebody who had an addiction problem, the last thing that I would do is, for one, call them out in front of anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and then for two, call them out when they're loaded.
Right.
Because immediately there's this wall up, this intoxication wall that you can't get through. And you'll have, I mean, I know so many people, and anyone who's listening to this that's a drinker has seen someone at a bar that's just bawling their eyes out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just an emotional wreck of,
kicks in.
I hate my life, and da 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 da. And even at that point, there's nothing that will go through, because they'll wake up the next morning and say, oh, well, I was just drunk.
Right.
And so from what I've found a lot of times is waiting. I mean, you really got to ride it out until that person, like say for instance, if I would have approached you before the gun incident and before all of that other stuff, and I would have said, hey bro, you have a drinking problem. I mean, how would you have would you have really received it that well? Or would you have been like,
No.
oh, I mean, I can, I'm fine. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of it has to do with the person being ready and addressing it, themselves.
No, I think you're right. Cause like, I think, cause so I got to read this quote to you. We went to an AA meeting and this guy was talking pretty much about what we're talking about now and kind of like how do I stop, and he basically said that cause it doesn't matter. I mean, people lose you lose your job, you can lose your family from different addictions, and he said that consequences never merited over the substance. And meaning that substance is so powerful. It will take everything from you. Everything.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And the consequence doesn't matter. I don't care if I get arrested. I don't care if I go to jail. I mean, I had my wife telling me I want you to stop drinking. And I was looking at her you're not the boss of me. I'm an adult. I can do this. I can be an adult. And clearly that's a lie, but
I mean, well, I thought I was an adult.
Right. So I'm saying like on that level, like it's hard to be able to like just all of a sudden go call out people and be like, hey, you should fix this. You're not right. But there's also, we can be there for people as well. You know, and I think if you, in my way, I can kind of give it, my story with this is being and living by example. And it sounds kind of cheesy, but I feel like I came out of rehab and I set my standard extremely high of, this is the path that I want to be. Nobody else. I don't care what like my parents think, my boss, who's my dad. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do me, and no one's going to stop me. And even that became with my friends and my really, really close friends. I was like, they asked me like, Mike, you think you'll never drink again? I'm just like, nope. I'm not going to do it. But I laid it out in front of them and just said, if you want to hang out with me, I don't care what you do. Like, you drinking in front of me does not like encourage me. It doesn't like make my mouth water, that I want that. But I finally can like just be me and do that. And laying that out there was so much easier, because I think it's such a struggle for people where they get out of rehab or they get back into the system with their close friends and they're like, hey man, we should do this again and do this. And there's just like no level of respect.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was in treatment, I had a guy come up to me and he said, one day someone's going to be asking you the same questions that you're asking me. Yeah. And immediately the thing that went through my head was bullshit.
Yeah. You're like, what are you talking about?
What the hell are you talking about? And, but it's true. I get the same questions working in a treatment facility. I get the exact same questions that people that I asked to me on a regular basis, and I think you're right. I think that one way that you can really help somebody is, or one of the best ways, probably the best way of helping people is being that example and is being that open, because so many people find so much shame in addiction.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, like I said, the word has such a taboo to it. But in reality, millions of people suffer from it. And if we're open about it, and if we say, yeah, I did have a problem, but guess what? I've conquered that issue and I am progressively, I'm working on it, and I'm getting better, then that's going to create a safe environment for other people to walk. There's a baby. It's going to create a safe environment for people to approach you and say, hey, I have this problem as well.
Right.
What do I do? Because that's really what it is a lot of it is they have to walk up to you. That person has to approach you. I mean, you could tell somebody all day, you're fucking up, you're doing this, you're doing that, and they could just live in denial. And until they get to that point where they're like, okay, I need help, they're going to turn to the people who they know are doing what they need to do.
Well, that, but like I hit that wire, but it shines. They're like, that guy looks like he's doing all right. Like, what is it about him? Like what is it? Like, I kind of want to know. Like I've not like I'm both boosting myself up by any means, but like I've had a few friends that have like actually contacted me and be like, hey, like, what do I like? Is this, am I in some trouble?
Yeah.
You seem like you had all your shit together.
Is
like
this an ordinary behavior?
Yeah. And it's like there's kind of those real raw questions that, and I'm not embarrassed by it. Like that was like my big thing. I was like, I don't want people to know. And like, especially like with my in-laws, they're probably on one of the, sorry if they're listening to this right now, they're probably like, oh man, but they definitely have a high standard of how they do things and kind of their level of expectation. It's not a wrong thing. That's just who they are. That's how they've raised and works for their relationship. And it's great. But to kind of live up to that, it's kind of hard sometimes, to think that you're trying really hard, but you're not quite there, and going into rehab and coming out, but finally like having a level of, I don't really care, I'm doing me and it's working. So we obviously can shake hands and have a mutual respect for each other and
yeah, absolutely.
And not hiding behind that.
Exactly. Cause you never know. I mean, maybe I'm not going to curse them or anything, but there could be anyone in anybody's family member anybody's family members that are suffering with something like that we aren't aware of yet. And so to be open about that and to not hide that, you know, this is what I'm doing, this is what, because instinctually, I mean, that's what everybody wants to do. You know, I don't want to be different.
Right.
I don't want to be different than any of you people.
But when you're hiding back on some of those stuff, so like I look back at like a lot of my family vacations on my side of the family, and you know, my two sisters, they don't drink. My older brother and I, we definitely had our fair share of partying, you know, and we would do it together a lot of times in front of the family, and also hiding it as well, like on a trip or something. And like watching the dynamics of the family when that comes out was never like a good thing. Mm-hmm. Like you could tell like there was people looking, you know, upset about something, or my dad is pissed off, like I told you guys not to do this, you know. And now like kind of living on a different wavelength with it of being and sober, it's like the dynamic is how a family unit should be. It's like mm-hmm. You're there for each other. You know, I got a sister lives in New York, sister lives in California, and we haven't been this close since like we were all living underneath my mom and dad's roof. Mm-hmm. Since I've took this approach and went to rehab and kind of like laid it out, like I need help, this is not working, like and watching the support from my own family and from my in-laws, you know, and my wife's family, it's been totally different. And that's the purpose of it though, is like you're honest, you're raw, you let it out, and you're there for each other. Like it sounds simple, but it's really pretty hard, you know, to do.
Oh,
kind of commit absolutely. With it, you know.
Yeah, I think most people would actually be quite amazed at the level of support that they gain from saying, "I have a problem.
Right.
I need help." A lot of people see that as weakness, especially men.
Oh,
Man,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kidding me? Big hardcore. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You know, construction worker. I don't
right.
need help. Dude, I worked for my dad for years, man, and the last thing I was gonna go up and tell somebody was, "Hey, I need your help."
Right.
Hell no.
Yeah.
And so so here's a curveball question. And honestly, I think that this we should probably make a segment of this on just this question. But as far as keeping it to ourselves, and as far as the shame goes, what do you think? I almost kind of sound robotic.
No, you're good.
Okay.
I know.
All right,
going.
Good.
Spit it out, Zach.
Yeah. Well, no, the microphone sounds robotic.
Oh.
Do you think addiction is a disease or a choice?
That's a good one. I think it's a disease.
Okay. Why?
I think it kind of like
I'm making funny faces.
I think it goes back into like my whole thing with the whole personality thing again. Mm-hmm. You know, because like somebody who's born, they could be more driven than somebody else that's not, you know, or somebody could be happier than somebody who's not. I feel like you're, I don't know, I'm not going anywhere with this, but I do feel like it's a disease though. And I do feel like once you do recognize that you have a problem, I think at that point, like you can, like you have the knowledge that you have the choice at that point, if that makes sense. Like, like if you're kind of on the mountain, you're like, okay, this is clearly, if I go this route, it's going to be negative. And at that point, you have the choice if you want to do that or not, because you can, you know, mm-hmm. There's nothing stopping you and me right now from standing up and going to the 7-Eleven and going crush some 40s right now, you know, but that's a choice, you know.
But
it's the disease factor of it. It's like, we clearly know, we're aware, like we do that. We know it's not going to be one. We're going to be going all night, you know, mm-hmm. next week, and take a month. And then all of a sudden we wasted a whole nother year of our life again.
Yeah, right.
What do you think?
I think, I get really, so like they told me that I was sick, right? In treatment, they're like, "You're sick and mm-hmm. you're not well," and la da 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 da. And I don't necessarily think they're wrong when they say that, but I also thought for a really long time that disease was a cop-out. Mm-hmm. I thought I could just use it. I mean, people were just using it as a reason to be like shitty people.
Sure.
You know, I'm sick, so I can I can go rob a pharmacy.
Right.
And in reality, and I had a really hard time. Also, the other thing that came into my, of course, my phone's going off.
I like your ringtone.
I know, it's pretty good. Disease or choice. It really came down to every time I thought that I knew that I had control. So, like, say for instance, Liar Liar, the movie Liar Liar came up with Jim Carrey and the claw. You know, how am I incapable? How am I so sick that I'm incapable of controlling my right hand? You know, like I can pick a cup up. You know, I can put it down.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not sick, and obviously, there's not this disease or whatever. It is a choice, right? Well, the problem that happens is I got into. It was a choice. Initially, it was a choice. I did choose to get high, and I did choose to get drunk. But it was what came after that initial choice. It's like exactly what you were saying. Things almost became robotic. They became just habitual. And I think that's where the disease aspect lies, is because it is a choice. Initially, it is a choice to pick up a drink or to pick up a drug or whatever that may be. But once an addict gets into that, like once that chemical gets into that addict, it's almost like something just switches in their brain. And I mean, in mine anyway. And then I'm in habit, and I go and I go and I go, and that's where I think the disease lies, because I'm so people always fight about this. You know, it's a choice. Addicts just need to get their shit together.
You just need to stop.
But
why would you do that?
Just stop doing it. Exactly. But think about it this way: is someone honestly, are we honestly capable of making a system of irrational decisions, consciously irrational decisions that fight against basic human instincts, which is survival?
Right.
Like, do we actually think that, because that's what we're programmed to do. We're programmed, basic instincts is to survive. And addiction does the exact opposite of that. It basically will bypass those and will go straight to, I mean, I'll pick drugs over food, you know?
Right.
I'll pick drugs over sex. I'll pick drugs over sleep. Well, food, sex, and sleep, guess what? Those are three things that are vital to progression. Right. Do I honestly think that I have the capability of consciously choosing my self-destruction? I don't think so. I think that's where it comes in.
I feel like yeah, I know what you're saying. I like that, though. It's a different slant that I have. But I do... one thing I struggle with is, like, so I've only been sober 9 months now, and it's like I still am like waiting, you know, like waiting for, like, I don't know how to explain it, like something good to be like shown to me. Like you are doing like the right thing, because like I still feel like shit, you know. It's you still feel tired or groggy, or you know, like you need to pick me up from a coffee or something, you know, during the day. But like I always like ask myself, I'm like, did you ruin yourself? Like did you ruin your brain? Like, is this going to be forever? And that's the hard thing with me with the whole disease thing, because it's like it's like a question mark, because I don't know. Like I'm still like fresh with this, obviously.
Yeah.
And I
9 months is pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good chunk of time.
I feel pretty good about it.
Have that. Yeah, a lot of people don't have that. So,
how long have you been sober?
It's coming on 4 and let's see, 4.5 years. 4.5 years, right around there. Yeah.
But did you
way too long?
Yeah,
but getting experience.
Like on my, I know. I would just want to be like Zach. But like, do you feel like you're comfortable now? Like, how long did it take you to like really feel good about yourself?
It took me almost a year, at least. Actually, I bet it actually took almost, I would say like 18 months ish. The problem with the drugs that I was doing, well, there was a lot of problems with the drugs I was doing. Mainly the drugs that I was doing. But The problem with them is they had a really long, they call it pause post-acute withdrawal symptoms. It has a really long half-life. And so amphetamines specifically take about 18 months for your brain to rewire. And so for the first year, and we actually have a friend who's kind of going through this right now. The first year is very much emotional nothing.
Yeah.
And I hear that goes for a lot of drugs, and drinking and stuff like that. It's just emotional. I flatline. And whenever I could go climb Mount Everest and I'd get to the top and I would be
You're like, oh.
I would literally be I would be, what's that word?
Just like not impressed.
Yeah, just, apathetic,
Okay.
I guess. I had zero
Not
emotion.
amused.
Yeah, not amused. Exactly, there we go. I'm sure there's a better word for it. I know there is, but...
You
and
climb Everest, you're like, this bores me.
Yeah, literally, though, that's what would happen. And I would be around all these people, and they'd be laughing, and they'd be having this, great time, and I would have this hollow laugh. Mm-hmm. I would laugh with them just because they were laughing, but I never found anything actually humorous. And it took probably until about 18 months in, and I was seeing a therapist regularly and going to meetings and all this other stuff, until I finally was able to, I guess one day it just kind of hit me. It's like, wow, I am content. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And it took some time, but it was well worth the whole, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I feel. Because a lot of people don't, especially if you've been using or drinking like a large majority of your life. When I was in treatment, I didn't know what kind of music I liked.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I liked to do. I didn't know what my I didn't know. I didn't have any favorites of anything.
Yeah.
Someone's like, "What's your favorite color?" I don't know. It's a color.
Like, I don't even
like
the rainbow.
Like, black.
Yeah.
Black like my soul. That's basically. But yeah, and so that's so common, and that actually is what takes out a lot of people.
I think, I know it does. I mean, that's why they're when you go to rehab, they encourage you, you should do IOP, or you should get into, day treatment, or get into sober living. So you're kind of focused around that culture,
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, after the whole detox thing and getting into rehab, I remember like people tapping on my shoulders, like, and talking to me like to my face and be like, "Hey, Mike, I just wasn't there."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and it scared me because I was just thinking to myself, is this forever? It's just like, it's a terrible feeling of like,
it's not forever.
Yeah. And you're like, okay. And your heart rate goes up, and then you wake up in the middle of the night with cold sweats, and you just feel like, ass,
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. Like, I would never wish that on my worst enemy. I would never, having to go through that. And, I would still, even 3, 4, 5 months sober, I would wake up at my house like on a Saturday morning, and I felt like I was hungover, and I was like shaking, like waking my wife up in the night, and just like, did I like suddenly sleepwalk to like a store and grab like beer and stuff? Like I feel like completely drunk right now.
So do you attribute that to the disease thing? Is that okay?
Yeah. So like,
I like that.
Yeah, it was it was very real. Like, I didn't really believe it because like there was all these like doctors that were telling me stuff when I was in treatment and stuff, and like, this could be a variable thing for how much alcohol you're actually drinking. Like, this could be a real thing. And it was real, and they weren't lying. Those doctors know their shit. They must have gone to school for a long time, because they were like, it was weird. I just wake up and just, had this hangover, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even drink.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it takes that time. And I know that one of the doctors said it's about a year of sobriety to really try to like connect your life back together. But I think a lot of people, like you said, it's a downfall for them. It's easier to jump that way and back into it and saying, I remember one of the people that were in rehab, he wrote on Facebook into our group chat. He was just like, is being sober, is it being all that talked up? Is it really that good? And everyone's like, oh no, yes it is, yes, and they're all typing really fast. And like the next day, he got arrested. And it was like, then everyone's like, see, told you, being sober is better and stuff. But it's like, not to like throw him under the bus by any means, because I love the dude, but that's real. People finally just like, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if I can live my life like this forever. Never, ever again, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, we're kind of like running out of time. We only got we're already an hour and a half in.
Okay.
How long do these normally last?
I don't know. I think we just wing it. Let's maybe throw another 10-ish
All right.
minutes in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm good with it.
Maybe make it like
I
an
guess
hour,
it really,
hour 45. It depends on
we should put a
what really
warning label.
happens.
Yeah, we should put a warning label. Warning, we talk a lot.
Yeah. Warning, we don't make a lot of sense. Just kidding.
So, how do you think beyond? I remember we talked about this. Like we talked about kind of shame going down from parent to kid to that kind of spreads addiction. There are like so many questions around like how is it I became an addict? How why me? You know? How
was I dealt this card?
How did I get here? Yeah. What do you think? I got a few things, but like what do you think would be kind of what kind of what would you think that dealt you that card, I guess?
So kind of backing up to what I said, like I was born with a smile on my face, you know, like always happy. But like I was always like that dude that would be like, would just go do it. You know, like, like I race skis, I race mountain bikes, and like everyone was like, oh, you know, like Mike's if anyone's gonna do it, Mike will do it. Like I'd go up on the hill skiing and just do stupid shit. You know, obviously it worked. I broke 23 bones, and you know, and counting. And all my children, I've got one of my sons broke a femur, and his other child, he has a broken wrist right now. So it obviously runs in the family. But it's more that type of extreme personality that I have. You know, it's kind of like go big, go home. And I remember one time sitting around like a campfire with a bunch of my buddies, and they all started telling like, oh, like what's the worst, stupidest thing you did? And every one of my friends' stories, they all contributed to me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I felt like just a piece of shit around this campfire where they weren't like deliberately doing it at me, like, yeah, but it was like kind of like one-upping each other, but like every story had like this root of like, how did we get there? And it was like, well, because of Mike. You know? It was like it was weird. But that's not too far off of like who I am, I guess. And to kind of on the whole getting myself into that alcoholic way, it definitely was like fun, like at the very beginning. And my parents don't agree with this with me at all, but I told them, I was like, at the very beginning with my like anxiety and like my way of life at the time, alcohol for a while like actually helped. You know, it like helped me to be more calm. It helped me to like relax and like let, you know, loose a little bit. You know, I'd finish kayaking a massive river and I'd like pound a beer with some buddies, and like it was like a noble thing, you know. It's like, man, we did it. We can't believe we did this. But like for me, it just always turned into like the extreme aspect of it. Like, let's do this. And I don't know. That's been I could say that for me personally. It's
kind of been instinctually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
What about you?
A lot of it did come from like family. I mean, my childhood, you know, like I said, I've been an addict. I have been an addict since as long as I can like, remember. I mean, addicted to something, whatever it may be. And so, but there are so many ways of creating an addict. I mean, your environment, your DNA, your trauma, you know, a lot of people are totally fine living life until something traumatic happens, and then boom, like all of a sudden they're a raging drug addict, you know, or a shopaholic or whatever it may be. And there's so many factors. I don't know. All I know is and this is kind of the point that I wanted to get at is whether I'm gauging on whether or not I'm an addict, I think doesn't because people really get caught up with that. They get caught up with, well, am I an addict though, or am I not an addict? I mean, how do I become an addict? And I think it's more along the lines of, I think that what people should focus more along the lines of is, do I have a problem? Whether I have a problem or whether it's an addiction or not, whether I put a name on it or not, do I have a problem and am I going to address it?
Right.
because people get so caught up. I'm sure that even somebody listening to this podcast will say, or will be wondering in their heads, am I an addict?
Yeah, where am I at this?
Am I? How did I become this? How did this happen? Where did this come from? La, da, 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 da. What is an addict or whatever else? And they're going to Google it.
But also with that, I'm sure that there's a level that people are feeling too of like that complete denial.
Oh yeah,
part of it too.
So
just like I don't like me watching Intervention. Like, oh, I'm so much better off than this person.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of comparing it to, and I think it's more. I think that I guess kind of the reason that I pulled this up is to address that, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if where my addiction came from. It doesn't matter how. At least not at this moment. It doesn't matter. What matters is I have a serious problem and I need to address it. How am I going to address it? Am I going to go to my doctor? Am I going to go to a treatment center? Am I going to go to my
reach
family?
out to my friend?
Exactly. Am I going to reach out to my parents or whatever it may be to actually address that? And I think that's a really big hump that people can't get over because they don't recognize, or it's not that they don't recognize it. It's that they live in kind of this wonder of, well, am I sick or am I not sick? And I don't think that matters, And I really wanted to bring that up, especially with the whole, like, who is an addict? And am I an addict?
Right.
Well, doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, am I doing something that is causing me distress?
Right.
Yes. Okay. I have a problem.
Yeah. Like I have like one of my really, really close buddies. He'll have a few beers and he's totally content.
Yeah.
It's like
crazy.
I like watch him and I'm just like kind of a non-biased judging opinion. I'm just like, no, that's not me.
Dude's sick.
Yeah. I'm just like, how do you that type of like Jedi control?
Yeah, no kidding. Like, you're only gonna drink half of that beer?
He's like, no, I'm done. I'm full. Don't want it. I'm just like, oh.
Leave like half a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Like, how did you?
Yeah.
I mean, a glass of wine is maybe a quarter full, and you leave half of that. That's a lot of wine.
Oh yeah. No, but like with people like that, like I have, and everyone's different, and I think that kind of rule of thumb of like kind of to each their own kind of works. If you can really put the brakes on, like I said earlier, and like really look at yourself and ask yourself, like, is this working or is this not working? And you're really putting yourself up at that point. Because I struggle with that. I struggle looking at myself in the mirror. I look in my eyes and I look back at even photos to this day and I look like shit. I know exactly like what was going on in my life. Even though I was lying to everybody else about it, it was like, or this or that or whatever, but like I knew what it was. And it's tough for people. And, because I know that I can speak about that because that was me. It's really hard to be that rough, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Way.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know. That's my encouragement. I don't know. This is our first time even like trying to exit this thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that
we're so
like end like on a happy. Excuse me, like end on like on a happy note. That's just my encouragement is to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself like, is this working or is this not working? If it's not working, figure out a way and really kind of taking an inventory, like your personal inventory on your life if it's working or not.
Absolutely.
That's hard.
Yeah. It's very hard. I mean, a lot of people would rather, look at, come on, I'd rather look at your shit than my own.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Any day of the week. And it gets very difficult. But I think you're right though. I think that the focus that people need to have is really on, do I have a problem?
Right.
It doesn't matter what this, am I an addict or whatever else. It's, am I contributing to a behavior that is causing me distress, whatever it may be. At a minimum amount, maybe it's my bank account, or at a huge amount. Maybe I just jack somebody's car and, to sell it for dough. And I think that's where really a person needs to address. That's where, yeah.
Because like a simple question, like I was reading this thing about, I don't remember where it was, but it was talking about like the national statistics and of people that actually really enjoy their life. They're like, do you enjoy waking up every day? Do you enjoy doing what you're doing? Do you feel like you have enough that you're doing every single day? And the statistic that was nuts was like how many people like actually hate their day job. But like they're not willing, and that's the big thing was the willing, you know, because there's people that are willing to have a shitty job, and they just are willfully doing it just because that's what they're used to. And it's like somebody that has that type of addiction personality as well, like they are willfully doing that. You know, they're going down that road. And to make that willful change to not do that, it's hard. You know, for somebody that's saying, I hate my job, I'm going to quit right now. I'm going to go tell my boss I fucking hate this place and I'm leaving. A lot of people, it's hard because it's hard to go find what you really want to go do. But it was just shocking to me of how low the statistic was of like how many people really enjoy what they do every single day. And I don't know, I was like just comparing that to like on addiction level too. But I don't know.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, we are.
I know that was like another
way out of time. So I'm not sure what we're gonna talk about next week. I guess we're gonna.
I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
We've got some.
We got all sorts of topics.
We wrote like 5 or 6 pages down. We got enabling. We're gonna talk about maybe next week or how to help an addict correctly. That's what we wrote down too. But
yeah, we kind of touched on that. So yeah, we'll see. All right. Anyway, so I just want to thank everybody for listening and for hanging in for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah. Hopefully you like it, and we'll see. Hopefully you'll see more of us soon.
All right.
Peace out.